Today we observe a world in flux. The old orders that have governed international relations for decades appear increasingly fragile. Amidst this uncertainty, a new and powerful alignment is taking shape, one that could fundamentally redraw the map of global power. Consider the deepening partnership between Russia and China. This is not merely a friendship of convenience. It is a strategic convergence of two great powers who share a common vision. They see a world long dominated by the United States and its allies, and they believe it is time for a change. Together, they possess the military might, economic strength, and political will to challenge the existing international system and propose a new one in its place, a world divided into distinct spheres of influence. So, what drives these two giants together? The answer lies in a shared sense of grievance and a mutual ambition. Both Moscow and Beijing feel constrained by the post-Cold War settlement. They view institutions like NATO and international norms championed by the West as tools designed to limit their power and interfere in their internal affairs. By forming a united front, they can more effectively push back against this pressure. Russia brings its vast energy resources and formidable military legacy. China brings its immense manufacturing base and technological prowess. This partnership is a union of complementary strengths, creating a formidable bloc that can stand against the Western-led order and pursue its own grand strategic objectives on the world stage. This hypothetical pact would be built on a simple yet profound agreement, a division of the world. Russia would turn its gaze westward, focusing its energy on reasserting its historical influence over Europe. China, in turn, would look eastward, aiming to establish its primacy across the vast and dynamic Asia-Pacific region. This division of labor allows each power to concentrate on the area it knows best, avoiding direct competition with its partner, while maximizing its own potential for expansion and control. It is a pragmatic arrangement born from a clear-eyed assessment of their respective strengths and goals. The ultimate aim is to dismantle the unipolar moment and establish a bipolar or multipolar world where they are the chief architects. The foundation of this alliance is a transactional understanding of power. It is less about shared ideology and more about a shared opposition to the current global leader. They see the United States as a common strategic rival whose global network of alliances stands in the way of their national destinies. By coordinating their actions, they can create multiple pressure points, stretching American resources and political attention thin. This allows them to make strategic gains in their respective regions while the West is distracted. This grand bargain, if it were to come to fruition, would represent the most significant geopolitical shift since the fall of the Soviet Union, signaling the definitive end of the post-American world and the dawn of a new, more contentious era. Russia's primary objective in this global bargain would be the restoration of its historical sphere of influence in Europe. The Kremlin views the eastward expansion of NATO not as a defensive measure, but as an encroachment on its security and a direct challenge to its status as a great power. The ultimate goal would be to reverse this trend. Moscow would seek to fracture the transatlantic alliance, creating divisions between the United States and its European partners. By sowing political discord, leveraging energy dependence, and using military intimidation, Russia would aim to make NATO an ineffective, paper tiger organization. This would clear the path for Russia to once again become the undisputed arbiter of security in Eastern and Central Europe. The strategy would involve a multi-pronged approach. Militarily, Russia would continue to modernize its forces, positioning them to intimidate its neighbors and challenge NATO's operational capacity. Politically, it would support populist and nationalist movements within European countries, hoping to destabilize established governments and elect leaders more sympathetic to Moscow's worldview. Economically, Russia would use its vast reserves of natural gas and oil as a potent political weapon, rewarding friendly nations with favorable prices while punishing those who resist its agenda. The goal is to make European nations question the value of their alliance with the distant United States, encouraging them to seek a separate peace and accommodation with their powerful neighbor to the east. For Russia, the benefits of this strategy are clear. It would achieve what its leaders see as strategic depth, pushing perceived threats far from its borders. It would restore the nation's pride and its standing as a major global player, no longer a junior partner or a defeated Cold War rival. This renewed influence would allow Moscow to dictate the political and economic trajectory of a significant portion of the Eurasian continent. However, the risks are immense. Such an aggressive posture would inevitably provoke strong resistance, potentially leading to a new and dangerous arms race in Europe. It would also require enormous economic resources, placing a significant strain on a Russian economy that is already facing considerable demographic and structural challenges. Ultimately, Russia's Western Gambit is a high-stakes play for historical redemption. It is an attempt to undo what its leaders perceive as the humiliations of the 1990s and reclaim the great power status it once held. Success would mean a secure Western flank and a dominant position in European affairs. Failure could lead to economic ruin, diplomatic isolation, and a potentially devastating conflict that would leave the nation weaker than before. This plan is not simply about territory. It is about rewriting the narrative of the 21st century, with Moscow holding the pen for the future of Europe. The success of this endeavor would depend heavily on the resolve of the West and the steadfastness of its alliances. While Russia focuses on the West, China's attention would be firmly fixed on the East. Beijing's grand strategy is to establish itself as the unchallenged hegemon in the Asia-Pacific region, a goal it refers to as the Great Rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. This vision involves securing control over key maritime trade routes, particularly in the South China Sea, and displacing the United States as the region's primary security provider. China would use its immense economic power as its main tool of influence, drawing neighboring countries into its orbit through its Belt and Road Initiative. This vast infrastructure project creates economic dependencies, making it difficult for nations to oppose Beijing's political and strategic ambitions. China's military modernization is a critical component of this plan. The People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, has been expanding at a breathtaking pace, transforming from a coastal defense force into a true blue water navy capable of projecting power far across the Pacific. The objective is to create an anti-access and area denial bubble that would make it too costly and dangerous for the United States Navy to operate close to China's shores, particularly in a crisis over Taiwan. By controlling the seas, China would control the economic lifeblood of Asia, giving it immense leverage over trade-dependent nations like Japan, South Korea, and the countries of Southeast Asia. This maritime dominance is the cornerstone of its regional ambitions. For China, achieving regional primacy offers tremendous benefits. It would secure its vital supply chains, protect its coastal economic hubs, and fulfill a long-held national dream of restoring its historical centrality in Asia. Dominance in its own backyard would solidify the Communist Party's legitimacy at home and provide a powerful platform from which to project influence globally. However, this path is fraught with peril. China's assertiveness has already alarmed its neighbors, pushing countries like Japan, Australia, India, and the Philippines closer to the United States. An aggressive push for dominance could easily backfire, creating a strong anti-China coalition that would work to contain its power and limit its strategic options. The ultimate prize for China in this global arrangement is the realization of the Pacific century on its own terms. It is a vision where Beijing, not Washington, sets the rules for regional trade, diplomacy, and security. Success would mean the effective end of America's long reign as the dominant Pacific power and the establishment of a new order centered on Chinese strength. However, this ambition places China on a direct collision course with the United States and its network of allies. The contest for control of the Indo-Pacific will likely be the defining geopolitical struggle of our time, and its outcome will shape the future of the entire world. A world consciously divided between Russian and Chinese spheres of influence would be a far more dangerous and unstable place. The clear lines of the old Cold War would be replaced by a fluid and unpredictable landscape of competition. While Russia and China might agree on the grand strategy of challenging the West, their own partnership would face significant internal strains. Russia, with its declining population and commodity-based economy, would increasingly become the junior partner to a technologically advanced and economically vibrant China. This power imbalance could breed resentment in Moscow, as it would be providing strategic cover for a partner that is rapidly eclipsing it in every measure of national power. Furthermore, their interests are not perfectly aligned and could easily clash. Nowhere is this more apparent than in Central Asia, a region that Russia has long considered its own backyard. As China's Belt and Road Initiative extends westward, Beijing's economic and political influence in countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan grows, directly challenging Russia's historical dominance. A dispute in this region could easily unravel the entire partnership, as both powers would see it as a vital area of national interest. This marriage of convenience could crumble under the weight of its own internal contradictions.
as two ambitious empires find it difficult to share a continent. Their shared opposition to the West may not be enough to overcome their own competing ambitions. For the rest of the world, the consequences would be dire. Nations would be forced to choose sides in a new global contest, sacrificing their autonomy in the process. The era of globalization, which allowed for the relatively free movement of goods, capital, and ideas, would likely come to an end, replaced by two competing economic and technological blocs. The West, led by the United States, would form one bloc, while the Sino-Russian axis would lead the other. This would create immense disruption, forcing countries to reconfigure their supply chains and alliances. The dream of a unified global community, governed by international law, would be shattered, replaced by a return to great power politics at its most raw. This scenario, while hypothetical, serves as a critical warning. It highlights the fragility of the current international order and the profound challenges it faces. The response from the rest of the world would be crucial. Alliances like NATO would have to be strengthened, and new partnerships, such as the Quad between the United States, Japan, Australia, and India, would become even more important. Diplomacy and a firm commitment to a rules-based order would be the most effective tools to prevent such a dark future from unfolding. The world stands at a crossroads, and the decisions made today will determine whether we move toward greater cooperation or descend into a new era of global division. Thank you for your attention. If you found this analysis insightful, please consider liking this content and subscribing for more perspectives on our changing world.